Welcome to the CIDDL Research and Practice Brief Series. The purpose of this series is to have conversations around the innovative use of technology in special education, early childhood, related services, and leadership personnel preparation. I'm Samantha Goldman. I am a graduate research assistant for CIDDL, and today I'm joined by Beth Stark, who is going to tell us about her research and what she does with this AI called LUDIA. Welcome, Beth. Tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce us to LUDIA.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I'm really honored to be here. I began my career as a special education teacher for students who are blind and visually impaired. And so I have been an enthusiast about how educators around the world can leverage technology to reduce learning barriers since day one. So with the advent of AI, in my work as a UDL consultant for international schools, I really started to think, how can we leverage ChatGPT to kind of bridge the gap between theory and practice when it comes to intentionally designing to reduce barriers with the support of the UDL framework. And so, that was my hope. That was the question I was trying to unravel. And I was fortunate enough to partner with Jeremy Rostan, who is the high school curriculum coordinator at the International School of Panama. And I reached out to Jeremy because he is an excellent writer, and he's also endlessly curious about artificial intelligence and excellent pedagogical practice. So we partnered to engineer this chatbot, who we named LUDIA. And LUDIA is a remix of the acronym UDL and AI. And yeah.
Oh, that's
And
brilliant.
so a lot of people assume that LUDIA is, a feminine name, but we are pretty clear that LUDIA is non-binary, and we don't want to reinforce a lot of the stereotypes about female helpers in the classroom. And so LUDIA is there as a presence and a thought partner, and more than just a thought, I should say a chatbot. We consider LUDIA a thought partner, and it's a free, universally accessible thought partner that can be accessed through your browser or through the Platform for Open Exploration app. The one barrier that we would love to see reduced is in terms of just WCAG compliance. So at the moment, you can use voice typing, but it does not have text to speech as a feature. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me and how I came to be the co-creator of LUDIA.
Very cool. I had no idea that's where the name came from. That's genius. Tell us about the issues that you're trying to address with your work with LUDIA.
So I consider myself, of course, passionate about UDL, a UDL enthusiast, but we all know that it looks great on paper. And then when it comes to, sitting at your kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon and trying to figure out how to use the UDL framework as a design tool, and which is what it's meant to be. It's supposed to be a scaffold for us as learning designers. Things can get really hazy really quick. And we know that developing capacity for instructional designers, educators, and leaders when it comes to just having UDL at your fingertips and being able to bridge our beliefs and the theories with our actual practice is a question and a question mark that has been lingering in the world of inclusive education for 40 years, right? So how can we develop our own capacity? How can we have more trainers of of educators who are equipped with the knowledge and skills to role release. AI is here now, and AI is, has endless potential to flatten the learning curve in many ways. And so LUDIA was designed to support all educators and instructional designers and leaders to have UDL at their fingertips and to problem solve and tinker with concerns, and to reframe barriers, so that they can really reach a little bit deeper when it comes to looking at how design and the iterative process of design can slowly but surely, make a big difference in their classrooms.
So you've told us about the issues that we're trying to address and how um, teachers are designers and using the UDL framework. Let's get a little more specific and tell me
Okay.
more about how a teacher can use LUDIA to support the variability in their classrooms. Students with disabilities, students, struggling learners, English language learners,
Mhm.
all the variability. There's more than I can list, but we know we've got variable learners. So how do we use LUDIA to support them?
Well, I'm going to reference the UDL framework in my answer. So if you imagine a classroom teacher who's inviting, a brand new class, they get their IEPs, they figure out, okay, what are the accommodations and modifications I need to have in place, et cetera. But that's not the lived learning, right? So on the daily, there's going to be challenges and, unexpected circumstances and lessons that they're going to have to figure out how to adapt, for all learners, not just most. And so LUDIA is there as kind of that expert in UDL down the hallway, except at your fingertips. And so just imagine you were trying to figure out how to create a universally designed routine for ensuring that everyone knew what to do for the first 15 minutes of every day. You wanted to make sure that all learners had an opportunity to share about their weekends, but in a manner that was, but just imagine, you want to make sure that, those weekend, shares about the weekend are inclusive and respecting the fact that not everyone maybe had a good weekend. So these conundrums that we all have when it comes to being inclusive practitioners, that pop up all the time. And, of course, we want to intentionally design universally designed routines. We want to think about our lessons about the water cycle or the scientific method, or, introducing the concept of fractions. All of these things that, we're so used to doing, we want to do them well. And in 2024, excellent pedagogy means inclusive pedagogy. It's not okay anymore to just focus on the learners who don't have IEPs. We need to be intentionally designing for all of the learners in our classroom. And so that's where LUDIA can really be a help in any and every way possible.
I didn't prep you for this, but can
Okay.
you show us an example of how, like, the teacher sitting at their table, it's Sunday night, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do this week and how they're going to teach the water cycle or how they're going to teach whatever content to
Yeah,
their students. What does that
sure.
look like? And
Okay.
I think you have screen sharing capabilities.
Okay, let me see here. Super. I know it all sounds great, but you have to see it in action. That's a
Right.
really
Well, I
good
mean,
point,
it's
Samantha.
great when you see it too. Having used it, it's pretty incredible.
Here we are. I'm accessing LUDIA via Poe on my browser, but of course you can always access it on your device or tablet, smartphone. And so LUDIA saves all of the exchanges that you have. So you can always revisit a question, and LUDIA will also prompt you to, let me know how it went. And is there anything else that we can, revisit so that we can reduce barriers in a different manner. So LUDIA can be accessed via the Explore um, uh, tab in the upper left-hand corner if you're new to Poe. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and just show you what one of the saved chats looks like. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the screen and press the little broom button, which is going to give me a clean slate. And so let's imagine that we're going to be welcoming a new student with a diagnosis of ADHD, who is unfamiliar with your classroom. They're going to be a new student the next day, and you want to make sure that they feel welcome and that they can kind of dive into the lessons that you're already teaching that week, and not feel overwhelmed. And that's pretty much what you would ask LUDIA. So you might say, for example, I am welcoming a new student to my 5th grade class. He has an IEP and is diagnosed with ADHD. And you might also say, I don't know, I would like to learn more about him. Because of course, we don't want the student's diagnosis to be the one and only aspect of their identity that we're focused on. But not all teachers feel comfortable or equipped to find out more, you know? So that might be the first question. Can you help me with some questions that I can ask that will respect him, and, or maybe you want to say that will respect him by focusing on his strengths and interests.
I love that.
So we know teachers have the best of intentions, right? But it's not always easy to link up and bring those best intentions to light. So, just thinking about LUDIA as that wise teacher down the hallway, what would you do? How can I make this happen? And so LUDIA is going to tap into the research base and all of the evidence-based practices that make up the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, checkpoints, and related practices. And it's going to give you some questions for you to chew on and think about. We don't expect teachers to copy and paste anything that LUDIA says. This is about starting a conversation kind of with yourself quite often. So for example, what activities or subjects really engage your curiosity outside of school? So focusing on, what's life like for you, outside of our four walls? Um, what kinds of topics, cultures, or experiences do you most enjoy learning about, right? So you want to optimize relevance and authenticity for every learner. So, really already trying to tap into not just who you are, but what do you like to learn about? So that's just an example of kind of a, off the top of your head question you can start by asking. And then you'll see after the response, there will typically be about 4 different options. So LUDIA is designed with UDL in mind. So we want to make sure that any user also has flexible pathways to continue on with their learning. And let's say you're working with a team of teachers and you want to share, what you're discovering through your exchanges with LUDIA. So you can click on the share button here, and that's going to give you options and a hot link so that you can allow those other teachers to see what you are reading, but also to choose their own pathway to continue with the exchange. So Another way that you can also use LUDIA is to develop goals. So you might actually pop in a Common Core or a different kind of standard and say, you might ask LUDIA, can you help me to develop authentic learning tasks, related to, and then you can say the goal or the standard, right, for
Working
my
with
fifth
a
grade
third grade
students.
teacher recently who was talking about multiplication and how do I work with all of my students on multiplication. We have
Mm-hmm.
all these different learning profiles and all these different
Mm-hmm.
ways. Like, how do I take this overall goal and what are some different ways that I can access the framework um,
Yeah.
and support all of my learners through? It's like, check out Ludia.
Excellent. Okay, and one way to really tap into what you're talking about is to use the phrase universally designed routines.
Okay.
Yeah, to help all of my third grade students understand the concept. I mean, it depends on the particular concept. Um, you know, here we're going to say of multiplication.
I think they were doing 2 by 1.
Yeah, that's even better. Let me go ahead and put that. Okay. And to practice their skills,
Yep.
right? Because that's really two different types of goals. So the responses that Ludia gives typically are going to help you first identify the barriers and then link those potential or predictable barriers to some options that you can consider. And it's going to match your level of specificity. So in this case, you can see here interactive e-workbooks for embodied trial and error exploration. Well, I don't know what that means, in context. So what we always recommend is for users to look at the 4 choices if they want to get more detailed and hands-on and specific in the exchange. So for example, here, can you provide more examples of interactive visual models using base 10 blocks or manipulatives, right? So it depends on what direction you want to go. And the other, one of the other responses is, or pathways is, how can I incorporate movement into skill practice games or routines for this concept? Right? So you really are trying to tap into multiple means of action and expression here. So the most common feedback that we receive about people who choose to partner with Ludia is, I didn't even think about that. So you start an exchange by trying to solve a problem. I don't know what to do tomorrow, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, these responses are expansive. They're not just, transactional, like, oh, here's your solution to the problem that you presented. But instead, it's about starting a conversation that is actually a scaffolded exchange. So, and you are self-scaffolding. So the more detail that you request, the deeper that slow drip learning, professional learning experience can go for you as an educator.
This has so much potential for that teacher on, Sunday night, sitting down, trying to
Mhm.
plan out, even having Ludia open while you're sitting in your grade level or subject level planning meetings.
Yeah.
Tell me about how Ludia could translate into pre-service teacher, pre-service special education, or even pre-service related service provider in that preparation world.
Yeah. The sky's the limit for sure. I was fortunate enough to do a guest lecture with some pre-service with a group, a cohort of pre-service students who are training to go into the classroom of international ed classrooms. And what I see is that they need space to run with it. So instead of trying to structure how LUDIA should be used, having leaders, instructional leaders in higher education who are modeling openness and curiosity and realizing themselves through experimentation and use that LUDIA is a tool that can reshape the learning curve completely. So instead of having to drudge through a lot of theory and imagine what it looks like in practice, now there is a tool that fuses both, right? So instead of having to develop a certain level of expertise in, how to navigate the framework, again, LUDIA is there to provide a contextually relevant, a slow drip professional learning experience that's also building skills and repertoire when it comes to, just being an inclusive learning designer.
How do you how do we prepare educators for using tools like Ludia in the field?
Mhm. So I would say they're going to continue to look to their instructors. And so the most important person in the room is not an AI chatbot, it's their teacher, it's their professor. So having a professor that models openness and curiosity about the potential of artificial intelligence is, I would say, probably the most important factor. And in terms of preparation, I think approaching this through the lens of universal design for learning is the best approach, which is let's co-construct a goal. We're all going to be working on the same goal here. And how are we going to know when we achieve it? And then allowing, all of those, burgeoning educators in your classroom or your lecture hall to choose their own method, however they want to go. So we have many flexible pathways here for any exchange. And then really encouraging people to think about the materials that they're using as whether or not they're creating more barriers. So, really looking at generative ways to access what's in the learning environment already, focusing on authentic learning tasks that are going to build in opportunities for learners, who are receiving special education services to be, part of their class, and to feel a sense of belonging. And really not always leaning towards, okay, what's the hottest and the newest platform that we can get them on, but instead actually leveraging artificial intelligence here in the form of LUDIA, to focus in on building more community within our classrooms.
What implications do you see for the future of research and special education with AI? And what are some questions we might be asking specifically with Ludia, but broadly as well?
We know what impacts high quality teaching and learning already. And so we have such a wonderful body of knowledge, and what the research has shown. And I don't think that's going to change. The question is, how can we leverage AI to bring more impactful learning to every learner in our classrooms? So 3 examples that I could lift up would be, first and foremost, feedback. AI is now going to be able to support teachers in analyzing the type and amount of feedback that they're giving learners. They're also going to allow teachers to be much more efficient in delivering um, feedback in many forms, whether that's written, audio, or video. And more importantly, AI can also feed back to the teachers about how impactful that feedback was for the learner. Another idea that comes to mind, just referencing Hattie's meta-analysis and what we know about impact, um, you know, thinking about teacher talk ratio, and does anyone record themselves and actually analyze, the number of minutes that are dedicated to them and their voice and the voice or the quiet of the learners in their care? I certainly never did it, but now AI can help us to monitor and develop our practice as inclusive educators, by giving us kind of a guide on the side, to really start becoming, yeah, expert practitioners when it comes to impactful practices. So that's something I think we should be asking ourselves. How can we amplify what we already know is great for learners by leveraging AI? I would really like to see the world of higher education develop a set of guiding questions, essential questions that can really support all educators or future educators in self-evaluating um, how they're choosing to use artificial intelligence. So these are some of the topics that I'd love to see explored a little bit more. And also, when it comes to inclusive practices, especially for students with special education needs, I worked for 16 years in private international education realms. And quite often, those schools have the best of intentions, of course, but they just don't have the resources to support learners with, especially with low incident disabilities. And so we always look to the specialist to have those skills. And if you don't have a specialist, in-house,
Mhm.
then sorry, we can't help your child. We can't accept them. And I want to see that change. I would love to see um, artificial intelligence start to open the doors to authentic equity in all educational spaces, because we're no longer dependent on, the expertise of, how to manipulate technology in order to reduce barriers. So OCR is a great example. And pretty soon, this idea of, having to be an expert in any particular tool will be out the window as well. It's just going to be a question of plug and play. And we all know that because that's exactly what happened with a personal computer. And that's what's going to happen with artificial intelligence in our classrooms. And instead of fearing that or becoming worried about teachers, you know, having to step aside, um, I would argue that teachers have never been more important. And now artificial intelligence and technology is going to allow us to be really in control of how we prioritize and allocate our time. And that means we're going to have more control over using our time to connect with our learners. Because so much of those problems and challenges and barriers that take up so much of our bandwidth and mental space, in the classroom and also with preparation, it's going to be it's going to be done for us.
A lot of what you said is echoed in the what was it? The US ed tech, not the plan, but the future of AI and learning, and talking about the importance of keeping the human in the loop. And whereas it's so easy to just have the AI do it for us, is that the best way to do it? And moving forward, how do we leverage what the AI has to offer
Mhm.
with the fact that we have a teacher who is an expert in what they do too, and finding a way to
Right.
blend the two together? Well, I want to thank you for your insight and sharing Ludia with us. This was so exciting, and it's a great platform. So thank you, and thank you for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you, Samantha.
Nice